Hi, it's Bee with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I have a fun fold alternative for the September 2023 paper pumpkin kit called With Love and Gratitude. This is a type of trellis card made popular by Bibi Cameron, and I've got a link to one of her videos in the description box. I thought that the pumpkins in the kit would look really nice against a fence, so I used the included note card to create one. Most of the pieces come from the kit, except for this basic white thick card base. Now I did step up the fence pieces with some dry embossing, but that's optional. Either way, it'll look great, and I'm excited to show you how to make it. Here are the supplies for the card. You can see that I'm using one of the Lost Lagoon mini note cards, as well as several die cuts. I've got a sentiment label, 2 of the pumpkins, and then these leaves, including the gold foil one. I'm adding in a piece of basic white thick cardstock. If you don't have the thick version, then you can use the regular basic white cardstock instead. This one is 8 inches across by 4 1/4 inches in height, and it's been scored at 2 1/2 inches along the long side. That leaves a small flap for the front, and then this back part is 5 1/2 inches across, so this is going to fit in a standard medium-sized envelope. Now for my card, I'm going to be adding extra texture by stepping up this note card. This is what forms the fence, and I'm using my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine with this timber 3D embossing folder. And I'm going to use a nail file to really bring out that texture even more. You can also use a fine grit sandpaper here, but remember the embossing is optional. I'm going to be stamping with Lost Lagoon ink, which is the color that came in the kit. And now we're ready to get started. I've got my silicone craft sheet down on the desk to provide a little extra cushion, and I'm going to start by stamping the card base. You can see that the crease is here, so this is that shorter flap that's for the front, and then this is the inside panel, and that's where I'm going to stamp first. I'm using Lost Lagoon ink to stamp the leaf image 3 times, and don't worry if there's overlap between the images. And now I want to stamp on the outside of the card on this front flap. So I'm just going to turn this back over so that I can have this part sitting down flat on my desk. And I'll add some leaves to this section. Now as you turn this over, check to make sure that you don't have any stray ink. If you do, wipe it off before you place your card back down. And that's what my card looks like so far. I want to go ahead and stamp my label, and there are several sentiments to choose from. Now I'm ready to work on this piece, and I'm going to start by trimming it. I've turned it so that one of the short sides is along the top, and I'm going to cut off a 3/4 inch strip. For the smaller measurements, I oftentimes find it easier to use the measurements that are on the right-hand side of the track. So here is 3/4 inch. I'll go ahead and cut that. And now I'm turning it again so that the long side is along the top, and I'm going to cut in the middle, right along the existing score line. So that is at 3 1/2 inches. Now we've got these pieces. Now here I'm going to pause to do the dry embossing because it's easier to work with these larger pieces. If you're not doing embossing, then you can skip this part. So here is my folder. I can tell that this is the top because I can see the logo here. And the grain of the wood in this timber embossing folder goes this way. So I'm going to turn my pieces so that they go this way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and straighten them out, and then I'll run this through my machine. As a reminder, for the 3D embossing folders, you're just going to need the platform, which is number 1, then your embossing folder with paper inside of it, and then plate number 4. And this is the cool texture that you get. Now I have to do my last piece here. Now it is going to be too long for my folder, but that's okay because I don't need the full length of this. So I'm just going to put it in, and then I can trim off that excess. Here's my piece, and here's where that nail file comes in, or you can use any fine sandpaper. I'm going to use it to sand away the top layer of my paper. Now, if we were using regular cardstock, the color goes all the way through, but with these printed pieces, the underside is white. So when we buff away the top layer, the parts that are raised get sanded away, exposing the white underneath. And that's going to bring out even more of the detail. So I'm going to take a moment to do the rest of my pieces just like that. Make sure to hold the paper far away from your face or even wear a mask so that you're not breathing in all those paper fibers that are coming off. And here's the final result. I'm going to finish trimming down these pieces now. For my long piece, I'm trimming this down to 5.5 inches. Save that little 1/2 inch piece that comes off there. From these pieces here, I'm going to cut 3/4 inch strips. So I've got the short side along the top, and I'm using the measurements here on the right. I'll end up with 6 pieces like this, along with 2 skinnier pieces that I could save for something else. Here's one more optional detail. I can trim a little bit from the corners here to make it look more like a regular fence. So I'm using the measurements here as a little guide, and I'm going to mark at 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to use that as a guide to cut off little triangles here from the corners. After you've done the first one, you can use it as a template for the others. You can also just eyeball it and choose to make the cut smaller or larger. Altogether, I added that detail to one end of 5 of the short pieces. I left the long piece and the remaining short piece alone. And now we're ready to assemble the card. I'm going to use my card base as a guide for putting together the fence. So I'm laying this out here just so that I can see what the width is without having to actually measure. I'll start with 2 of these fence posts, and I'll put them close to but not quite at the side edges. And I'm using my grid here to help me line up the bottoms. Now I'll put the one in the middle, just eyeballing it, and then 2 in the spaces in between. Now I'm taking the time to straighten them up and play around with the spacing till I'm happy with the way that it looks. You can use the grid as a guide to your spacing, but really eyeballing it is fine. It is very useful though to help make sure that they are lined up on the bottom. Next, I need to put the long piece going across. So I'm going to go in and put some glue across on those pieces. Now my last piece, the one that doesn't have the extra detailing, this is also going to go across. It's going to go on the bottom here. Now obviously it's not going to reach the whole way, but that's okay because this part is going to be all hidden by the other die cuts. I'll give you a closer look at that. And as you can guess, we are now going to attach our fence to the card base. So I can see here that I really just need to put some glue on the backs of these two pieces here. Then some on these little areas on the piece that goes across. I'm lining it up so that the bottoms are even. And there we go. Checking it out, and that looks good so far. Remember, we're going to add the die cuts, and that's going to make things more stable. This little extra piece that we had trimmed off is going to be glued over here on the card to give the look of a long piece that spans all the way across. I'm going to eyeball it, but you can also use a straight edge to go across to make sure that those are going to line up. Now to arrange the die cuts. I'll glue most of these down, but I'll save the white pumpkin and put some dimensional foam stickers beneath it for an extra lift. I'm using my fingers to curl up the edges of the leaves to give them more dimension. And finally, for the sentiment. Here I just need a line of glue along the top of the label. Remember, I want to be careful not to put any glue on parts that are going to touch the back of the card. Before I finish up, I want to double check and make sure that nothing is sticking that shouldn't. And then I'm also going to check this part here. I can see that I can afford to put a little bit more glue on these cross pieces to hold everything more securely together. There's our finished card. We have this beautiful scene on the front and a fun fence that opens up, and then here is the space for your message. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity. If you get a chance to try this project, I would love to see it, so share it in my Facebook group or tag me if you're sharing elsewhere. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin but don't yet have a demonstrator, you can find my subscription link as well as all of my other links in the description box below. I hope to craft with you again next time, and until then, have a great day.